up ahead. Affirmative 612.
Back for another edition of the Wealthy Pilots Podcast with the one and only Scott Osborn here to chat with us about investing, finance, and retirement. I got real Southern for a second there, Scott. He is the airlines advisor at Patriot Wealth Planners. You can find him online at retireairlines.com. That's retireairlines.com. And Scott, let's talk about building our own pension because they be dying out there.
Is North Carolina considered the South?
It was for the longest time, but I think it's pretty purple now. It's a little red, little blue, little north, little south. So yeah, I don't know.
Oh, sure, you got a little twang coming in there every now and
Well,
then.
it's funny. So my brother was born and raised here, and he's way country versus me.
Yeah.
But I was my family was moving around all the time. When I was growing up, so I guess I got a little bit, but
little twang.
So versus Ohio, you're not too nasally for Ohio. So that's good.
Yeah, well, I had surgery for that last year. So.
That's true.
It's everybody up here, man. It's terrible. Let's talk about pensions.
I mean, they're dying, right? But can you build your own? I guess you can.
Yeah, pensions are interesting. So we've been talking to a good amount of FedEx guys right now because of the they got a new temporary agreement, TA26, that they're getting a lot of great things. I think getting that comp package probably on par with the industry. But one of the things that's coming at them is some potential changes to the pension. And, it got me thinking of even the military as an example. The military for, all of time was 20 and out was the minimum requirement to do to get your 50% pension. And then every year you stay in, you get an extra 2.5%.
Okay.
And so, when I was at year 13 in the military, they rolled out a new hybrid system. I was kind of grandfathered into the old system, but now there's the younger troops they're getting like a 401k match. It's in the TSP, but they're getting like a TSP match, and and there's some of it that's good because it used to be if you did 19 years and got out, you got nothing. And so it's good that the folks that maybe want to do 10 years or many times 8 years, they're still getting some sort of match and all that. They call it the blended retirement system. But the long and the short of it is, the government, many industries, many companies are definitely looking at, limiting their pension liabilities. And again, pension liabilities are a major, major thing on a company's balance sheet. And so when you look at a company's balance sheet, right? Assets equal liabilities plus owner's equity. That liabilities section, right, is huge when it comes to the pensions that they have to pay.
Okay.
And when I say huge, I don't necessarily mean the dollar amount. I mean, it's a huge fixed portion because that is a commitment.
Oh yeah, which is why so many companies have been killing it for the last 30, 40 years, right? They
and
don't want
so as assets ebb and flow based off of how the company's doing, and that doesn't typically go down, it just continues to grow. That pension liability, it gets to be something very sticky for the company to have to manage, especially in down times. And so ultimately there's a big interest. I wouldn't necessarily say it's in the best interest of the employees all the time, but there's a big interest in the company to get those pension liabilities off of their balance sheet.
Okay. And
so, when we kind of tie that back to the person though, many times in the old days, quote unquote, everybody, especially the airline industry, you did your, decades of flying and then you got your pension. That's it. Well, now there's it's much more complex in terms of, okay, I got the NEC 401k contribution, employee contributions. I have market-based cash balance plans for spillover. I got healthcare retirement accounts. I got non-qualified deferred compensation. There's all these things going on, and it's a little different at each airline. The two big ones that still have pensions are UPS and FedEx on the cargo side.
Okay.
And then a lot of the major airlines have kind of gotten rid of those now, and they have larger 401k contributions and other things to make up for that. But at the end of the day, when I think about pensions and I think about trying to build your own, there's a handful of things that I think kind of come to the table. First off, when we look at the pension decisions that you might have to make, you're going to have to figure out, and again, for this doesn't apply to everybody because some of the airlines don't have pensions. But you're going to have to, decide on the survivability of the pension. Like, do I want to take 100% joint payout where if I die, my spouse is getting 100% of the pension. If that's the case, you're going to get a lower dollar amount. Or I might say, hey, I'll take the 50% where if I die, 50% of it's going to the spouse, but I get a higher dollar amount while I'm alive. Many people will do that, and then they'll buy a life insurance policy to kind of bridge the gap if something happens to them. So there's kind of those pension decisions on like, hey, when I'm getting ready to retire, like which one do I select? So you just got to make a mental note like, hey, I got to make sure I do some analysis for that. I believe many people wait until they're getting ready to retire to make that decision. Mm-hmm. I believe you should make that decision earlier rather than later. Because if you look at, wanting to build your own, let's say, income stream, that's really what a pension is. If I want to build my own income stream to replace my 50% of the pension when I die, I got to have a plan for that. And I got to start funding that plan right now. And so, that's a little bit of where some of our other 401k savings and things like that are going to come from. The other decision would be like maybe, what some of the FedEx guys are going through right now are, okay, I got to decide between, do I want to take the pension option that's coming out? Do I want to take this kind of split option where they're going to do, some to the pension and some to me, or do I want to do this other plan where they're going to give more to me in my 401k and then fund some to a market-based cash balance plan? And again, you can scenario plan each one of those and run financial models and what they look like between now and when you retire and then through retirement. And you should the software exists to run those mathematical scenarios and then figure out which one's in your best interest. And again, if I have Social Security, VA benefits, military pension, and my wife has a pension from the government, let's say, I might not need as much fixed income that I'm going to get from a pension from my employer. So maybe I'm okay with taking a smaller pension from my employer because I have all this other fixed income in retirement and getting more liquid assets that are going to come to me.
That's a great point, because we tend to think about, let me get the highest dollar amount, but maybe every scenario is going to be different, but maybe that's not the ideal selection for you, right?
I mean, typically speaking, when you're getting guaranteed income, it means you're losing capital appreciation of what that would have been worth had I received it on my own.
Okay.
And so what I mean by that is if I look at Social Security as a perfect example. We pay into Social Security. And if you look at what most people pay into Social Security and then they get a payment back in retirement, if they would have just invested that in the S&P 500 and then taken income from it later, most people would have 3 to 5 times more retirement income. But because of how pension funds are managed, because they're managed more conservatively, because they can't take those big dips because they have so many distributions they got to make, pensions are managed more conservatively. Well, if I got a 15, 20, 30-year time horizon, I don't need to be conservative. Let me keep the money and I'll invest it and grow it more aggressively. And then when I get ready to retire, then I'll take those distributions and I can pivot. A pension plan doesn't operate like that. The pension plan has to be more conservative because they're on the hook for these distributions nonstop. And so that's where, we would always recommend you run the numbers, because I do like to see people get a good amount of fixed income. So I want to see you, if I'm going to need 20 grand a month to live off of in retirement, hypothetically, after taxes, well, we want to see, somewhere between 50 and 65% of that covered from fixed income sources.
Well, let me ask you that with that in mind. So if we're talking about building your own pension, let's say, and you're using your different income sources, you're building it. Let's just go with $1 million, kind of pension that a lot of people probably use that as a target number. What does that generate in monthly income? About $5,000 or so, 5-6 grand, something like that.
So this is where you have different rules of thumb that come in. If many people have heard about the 4% rule. Hey, I can distribute 4% of my portfolio annually to me, and that asset base should sustain. So on $1 million, that's 40 grand a year. I would say, let's call it 2 million just to make it at least a little bit more realistic for a lot of the folks we're talking through. So that's going to be 80 grand a year off of the 4% rule. Well, the 4% rule was just a rule of thumb that somebody made up.
Right.
There's like some research to support it based off of.
Yeah, he made that in the 90s, Scott, and he actually revised it a couple of years ago. He made it like 4 point something, but for years it was more like 3 something. So
yeah, there's some market assumptions that go in, and the logic is that, hey, the market's going to grow at 7% per year, hypothetically.
Right.
And inflation's 3% per year.
Hypothetically.
Hypothetically. I mean, the last 5 years, that's definitely not been the case.
Yeah.
And so if the account's growing by 7% per year and the cost of living is going up by 3%, I can take that 4% out in essence. And so, when we look at the reality of what that looks like, though, I mean, we're not getting 7% per year. I mean, really, the S&P 500 is average more like 9. We don't get 9% per year, even if it averages 9%.
Not unless you're 100%, and you probably can't handle the volatility of that.
Yeah, I mean, but we're still not getting 9% per year. We're getting, 20, then minus 10, then 20, and so we're getting all that volatility. We're not getting just numbers on a spreadsheet that we drug over, sell, and say, oh, well, yeah, my model looks good. I mean, the model's ignoring volatility. And so when we talk about trying to build our own pension that's going to kind of survive that volatility, this is where most annuity salesmen are going to say, hey, you got to buy an annuity and you can build your own pension like that.
Right.
I wouldn't say I'm like anti-annuity. They're good for some people in some circumstances.
Sure. It can be a useful tool for some people.
A useful tool. If you don't have hardly any Social Security and you don't have any pensions, no other like VA benefits or anything, you might want to beef up some of that with an annuity. For most of our folks, I mean, I'll just say at least for our pilots, when you look at their asset base and the income that we're trying to produce, I just haven't found a good spot one time where it makes sense for them. So, what we want to look at is carving out of the assets. We want to build what we would call like a safe bucket and a growth bucket, and basically use our assets. We're going to use our assets to build a pension through a monthly distribution plan. And again, this is in retirement where the management of this gets very, very important, because we are I don't want to say we're responding to what's going on in the market. Right. We're acting on our plan based off of what the market is delivering to us every year. And so if we have like a safe bucket and a growth bucket, we're going to, as the market goes up, which is 82% of the time, year over year, month over month, we're going to skim off of our growth bucket and use that to fund our monthly income. And then when we have years like a 2022 or 2020 or 2018 or 2008 and the market's down, it's going to happen. So we got to have a plan for it. It's down. We're going to come over to the safe bucket and start to spend that down, let those equities recover. And then when the equities recover, we're going to skim off of that, refill the safe bucket, and keep funding the income plan. And that's basically how we're building our own pension. And again, we want to model cost of living increases into this pension. If we run the numbers and we figure out, hey, we're going to figure out how to get you $5,000 a month net of taxes into your checking account to live off of. Well, that $5,000 a month at age 65 is not going to be the same at age 80. So we got to model inflation to make sure that we're increasing those distributions and helping you grow. And so, to me, when we talk about building our own pension, what we want to really map out is look at what are all the accounts we're going to have in retirement. We can figure that out today. What are we going to have in retirement? And let's work towards that so we know when I retire how the income's going to turn on and how we fix that income over time. And that's where, to me, I think we can really build kind of our own pension, our own income stream for life with the assets we've built out. But again, we still want to do an analysis to make sure that we've looked at some of the other aspects of the pension options I do have and do an analysis with the other fixed income that I'm going to have and get a good handle on how much fixed income do I need to get from my liquid assets? And then we can start to bridge that gap. So, yeah,
I mean, the analysis has got to be the key start, right, with any situation, certainly. So if you'd like to get an analysis, reach out to Scott, get started today. Go to retireairlines.com. That's retireairlines.com. And it's complimentary. So why wouldn't you get started? Even if you got some questions, if you're thinking about building your own pension or any other of the myriad of things that we have to think about when we're building a retirement strategy, whatever career path you happen to be in, it's certainly worthwhile to have, that analysis done. So reach out to them again at retireairlines.com. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to us here on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. Any final thoughts, my friend, before we wrap it up?
The only thing I'll say as we kind of wrap up here is, any assets and savings we have are simply an acknowledgement of future expenses. So, if we're acknowledging it's for future expenses, it's good to just stop and take a minute and think, how are we going to build that out to cover the plan? And so I do think it's a worthwhile thought exercise to build that out in advance. So looking forward to chatting about it. And thanks for spending the time here for it.
Yeah, man. Because retirement's not an account balance issue, right? It's an income issue, right? You got to have money coming in when the check stops. So we all know that. Got to get it done. Reach out to Scott, and Molly will come on and tell you how to get the toolkit. That's a great way to do it. But subscribe to us here on Apple, Spotify, and of course YouTube. And we'll see you next time on the Wealthy Pilots Podcast with Scott Osborn.
Hey everyone, real quick, if you haven't grabbed Scott's Financial Flight Control Toolkit yet, now is the time. This is packed with tons of helpful resources and tools like this, Scott's book, The Dichotomy of Wealth, which is a pilot's guide to maximizing wealth and cash flow in retirement. You also get access to some great guides like this one, Advice Matters, which breaks down 4 key ways a good financial advisor can help you boost your returns over time. And guides like this one on the pitfalls of emotions when it comes to investing, and this one on the HCM byline investment strategy, and more. So if you'd like your very own Financial Flight Control Toolkit, just click the link in today's show description, and Scott and the team will be happy to get one sent your way at absolutely no cost to you.
Information is for illustrative purposes only and does not constitute tax, investment, or legal advice. Always consult with a qualified investment, legal, or tax professional before taking any action.